Welcome into episode 56 of the Two Pad Stack podcast. I'm back in the saddle again, back from sunny Miami. Your host, Ace. Alongside me, my wonderful co-host, Jake Reiser. Jake, how's it going, buddy?
Doing good. Hope you stole the Panthers lock while you were down there.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, it was like, what is that movie with friggin' Nicolas Cage? Whatever. I stole their Declaration of Independence and everything, and it's not good for them. So I hope that they continue to just have an awful experience. It's glad. I'm so glad to be back. I mentioned this to the guys beforehand. The weather down there was very nice. It was like high 70s, not too high humidity. I get off of the airplane to come home, and the weather's the friggin' same in Boston. Like, what is going on here? And now it's cold again. But hey, it is what it is. It's fun to be us in New England here. Weather's fun. Bruins hockey is fun, and we've got a fun guest today to talk about Bruins hockey. We have low quality Bruins fan today, aka Ian. Follow his YouTube channel, Low Quality Bruins Fan, as well as get his content on the Short Shift podcast. Low Qual, how's it going, buddy?
It's going fantastic. If you asked me like 3 days ago, I think the answer would be a little different, but I'm feeling really good, and I really appreciate you guys having me on. I'm a big fan of you guys' work, so I'm ready to talk some bees.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Before we jump in here and go through our agenda for today's episode, I just want to give another shout out to our friend of the show, Nick Lanciani, who jumped in to help out while I was out. And make sure if you haven't yet, go ahead and check out his podcast. It's called the Goalie Hug Podcast. It's predominantly Bruin centric. Nick is a frequent guest on Brews and Bruins with those guys over there. So once again, thanks, Nick, for jumping in and help out. I really appreciate it. But we've got a little bit of a postmortem that I think we should probably start with here, on the month of October. I was super stoked. I think everyone that is a Boston Bruins fan was super excited to get the season underway. They had two giant free agent acquisitions. Everybody was touting this defense is probably one of the top ones in the league. Swayman finally gets signed before the regular season even starts. They have, Mark Kastelik coming in to hopefully stabilize the fourth line center position. Elias Lindholm is going to be a true number one center that we haven't had. Everybody's going to be slotted so much better. And apparently the Boston Bruins didn't get the memo. Like, that was some of the worst hockey I have seen this team play. And we've already broken down a lot of the individual games. We'll talk about last week's games specifically. But just, from a high level, holistically speaking, the month of October sucked for the Boston Bruins. At one point, they were the last team in the Atlantic Division, behind Ottawa, behind Buffalo, behind Detroit. Like, not what anyone really had planned for this Boston Bruins team. They went 4-6-1 in October, and I can't really say that there was ever a moment where I was like, wow, this team looks good out of any of those games.
No, even against Montreal, where we kicked their teeth in, and it still was like, God, they can't complete a pass. We're all over the place. The top line was finally doing something. This is the first time since 2011, 2012 that we finished the month of October 2 games under 500. I mean, we finished that season with 49 wins. So, I mean, we're fine. But my God, it's so easy for this fan base to just think the wheels are coming off. But that was a month that could, really give you that feeling.
The hindsight monster can come in and say, oh, well, there were so many new pieces coming in and you couldn't expect the chemistry to be perfect right away. Screw hindsight at that point. Look, you're honestly right that I think we were all so excited because there was like true talent on paper on this team, with Zadorov hopefully showing up the back end, Elias Lindholm finally being a 200-foot center that they could rely on. And just nothing seemed to go right. And you're right, Loqual. Even the Canadiens game, I was there, the home opener. They were up, 3 goals, turned it into a 1-goal lead because they just looked completely lackadaisical in the third period. There was never a game, I think I said this last week with Nick, there wasn't a game where you could ever sit and go, wow, we really just kicked them in. We just did great. It was a full 60-minute effort. I never thought we were going to lose the whole way. There was none of that. It was either, oh God, I'm holding on to my pants right now, or we're getting our teeth kicked in, and I'm just like, this game's not worth watching. That's pretty much the month of October to me.
It really it's specifically that game, and I don't know why I keep going back to that game in particular, but it's a good example because it did seem like the Bruins were on an emotional high. It was the home opener. All the players are being introduced. The Garden was buzzing. And it just seemed like systematically, I don't know if the Bruins are running a new system defensively this year, but there were so many lapses in coverage. Like, I mean, you saw Brendan Gallagher getting that soft spot behind the ice, uncontested, and had an easy tap in goal that game. And it's just like some of those like just mental gaffes continued to rear their ugly head throughout the month of October. But I don't know. I'm ready to put October to bed. I think Jim Montgomery is ready to put October to bed. I know that Jake and Nick touched on this last week, but I'm interested in getting Low Qual's take on this. You know, obviously the best cure to a terrible start is back-to-back shutouts on a weekend. That was a miracle weekend for Jim Montgomery as far as I'm concerned. But do you think that Jim Montgomery is on the hot seat right now with some of the performances that the Boston Bruins had in October?
Oh, I was all in on the seat warming up. I was very clear that I didn't want to see a firing this early in the season.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was fair to anyone involved. Every loss feels like the coach should be shipped out of the building. But the way they were losing, and a lot of people were trying to sparse blame all over the place, which of course there was. Sweeney built the team. I didn't like the offseason personally.
Okay.
I thought Lindholm coming in was going to be a good 2C. I just didn't like the way people were looking at him as a true 1C. Zadorov, I'm not a fan of. I'm still not quite there with him. But at the end of the day, I wasn't super, super pumped about how all of this was going to look, but I still look at the coach right now. It's the way we're losing the games. It's the lack of structure. It's the four players chasing Svechnikov behind the net. And you sit there and go, okay, what the hell is that? No one's focused. No one has any idea what's going on. Obviously, a lot of blame belongs on the players for the October record, on Sweeney. But as far as immediate fixes, I was looking at Monty, and I felt like the seat was really warming up. Not warm enough to fire him. I felt like that would have been just a ridiculous move so quickly. I think he earned more of a benefit of doubt. 4-6-1 isn't the end of the world. But yeah, I was very much looking at Monty. And people, I was surprised by how many people were just like, well, you can't blame Monty for this. No structure, no focus. I mean, the line's shuffling every other shift. I don't know how you don't include him in it. It's one thing to say it's not mostly his fault. Fine. But you don't include him at all? That feels weird.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. And I know that, like I said, Jake and Nick were able to break this down last week. And, you know, I haven't really been able to provide my thoughts on it yet. You know, I'll be candid. After that Carolina game, I was so steamed. Like, you could probably see the heat coming out of my ears. I was that angry because it just seemed like there wasn't even like a moment. Like when the Boston Bruins are dominating a team, I feel like they do that through two periods and then they kind of let up and they just kind of coast and try to close out the game. The Carolina Hurricanes did not do that. They had their foot to the pedal for all 60 minutes, and they didn't let the Boston Bruins stand up off that mat. They choked them out. And there was at no point during that game where I was like, okay, there's a positive that we can build on and move on from this. There was no positive in that game. I don't even care about the 2 goals. Like, they were nothing goals. It was just as soon as we had like one slightly good play that occurred, Carolina hemmed in the Boston Bruins like 5-on-5 for like 6 minutes straight. So I may have said some things about Jim Montgomery at the end of that game that I probably shouldn't have. But at that point, I was ready to drive him to Logan Airport myself. But
and because the team didn't even look interested.
Yeah.
Like, who's got the room at that point? Do you really start to question? I mean, if you've lost the room, it's a totally different thing. It's we just can't have you around anymore because it's really hard to get that back. I'm very comfortable with Monty. I have some concerns about the playoff performances, but I think everyone after that Canes game just went, I don't know, maybe we need to do something just to do something. I'm glad we don't immediately do that, but it felt like it at the moment.
Right. Oh, I thought the writing was on the door after the Carolina game. I sat to myself, head in my hand, thinking, if something good doesn't happen this weekend, I'm ready for the press release on Monday morning going, we've parted ways with Jim Montgomery. I'm on the A side of things. Just Marshy scores the power play goal, the fluke power play goal, tied up at 1-1. I'm like, okay, you know what? Sometimes you need that puck luck. The PDO needs to flip your way. Maybe that'll spark and go like, okay, look, maybe now we're getting those bounces again. And then 5 minutes later, it's 4-1. And just I was beyond apoplectic to the point where it was almost apathetic. Like, this is just the new norm now. This is what it is. You
It
get
became
one
funny.
good play. Yeah.
It was.
It started to just get like by 6 goals. You were just like, ha ha, another one. All right.
It was like
It's just
Stockholm
became-
syndrome. I was like, score 10, get
Yeah,
10.
I
That would
was
be
rooting
awesome.
for 10 at a certain point. I really was.
Oh my God.
If we had lost both games of the weekend, is Monty still here?
No.
I don't think so.
I don't think so
think so.
either. I think that would have been it.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that, I mean, I saw the question before these 2 games, before the Philadelphia game, and we'll touch on that one too, where people were like, all right, this has kind of been a crappy start for Jim Montgomery and the Boston Bruins. And that was before those 2, like I mentioned. And people were asking at that point, is Jim Montgomery on the hot seat? And I had a very simple answer to that. Has he been extended yet? He's got a pending, he's not signed for next year. That in itself is a hot seat. The pressure is on him to go out and perform and prove that he deserves a contract extension. The fact that he doesn't have one at this point of the season already tells the message that front office is saying, we're not 100% sold on you yet. Now prove it. And that is a hot seat. So I'm very intrigued to see how they continue this momentum. Let's, before we move on to some of the good parts of the week, let's go ahead and talk about the other games. So if the Carolina game was in a vacuum by itself, everybody has a rough game. Everybody can just kind of get, that was just one bad game. Let it roll off your back, turn the page. It's a new day. But the fact that it came right on the heels of losing 2-0 to the Philadelphia Flyers, who very well should be a lottery team this year, that's what really, really set me off. Because, it would be one thing if I believe that the Philadelphia Flyers played a really strong systemic game. John Tortorella had them working in the trenches. And I'm not saying they played a bad game against the Boston Bruins and still won. They did play a decent game. But the Boston Bruins did not seem to be putting in any effort whatsoever, top to bottom, throughout the organization. And I kept waiting for the leaders to lead. And I didn't see it from Brad Marchand. I didn't see it from David Pastrnak. I didn't see it from Charlie McAvoy. It was so bad that even Elliot Friedman, who tries not to take digs at players publicly, even he was like, I don't know what's going on with Charlie McAvoy. Like, he is the player that I am seeing. And I'm like, this doesn't even look like the same player. So that was my big concern, is that I was ready to say, okay, shitty game against Philadelphia. Let's see how they do against the true contender, the Carolina Hurricanes. And then they just proceeded to shit all over themselves even more. So
I was at the game against the Flyers. It was like watching a zombie team skate. Aside from Jonas Korpisalo, who played out of his mind, and I felt so bad for losing that game. It was like a zombie team the whole way through. They played so apathetically. They played with no energy. It's like they lost the fundamentals of hockey. I'll bring a little baseball analogy for a second. It's like the Dodgers scouting report for the World Series about the Yankees this year. The Dodgers basically said, let the Yankees play Yankee baseball. They're going to mess up the fundamentals. It's talent over skill at this point.
And boy,
that's what it felt like the Flyers could just do to the Bruins there. It felt like it was just talent, and just let the Bruins play Bruins hockey, what they've been doing the last month, and we'll beat them because no passes are connecting. They're hitting skates. They're missing tape. They're skating slow. They're not winning on the forecheck. They're not hustling on the back check.
Leaving the slot wide open.
It was just such lackadaisical hockey. And I'm more upset the fact that nobody was frustrated about it. I'll give a little credit to Manny Patra, who got punched in the face directly in view of a ref and looked at ref and was like, really? And decided to take matters into his own hands. But that's about the only time there was energy in the building that night. It was maybe the most zombie-like, apathetic, like playing in a funeral game I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't want to be the guy that's like, oh, old-time hockey, and this is how the Boston Bruins are supposed to play. But even like the 2014 Bruins, like, if you are going to just get your ass kicked up and down the ice and the game is out of hand, you better be damn sure that somebody on that team is going to go try to get their pound of flesh. And I didn't see any of that from that team. And I'm like I said, I'm not going to be that knuckle dragging Neanderthal. It's like, if we're going to lose, beat the shit out of somebody. But I want to see some passion, some fire, some pride for the game, the pride for not just the name on the back of the jersey, but the name on the front. And that just wasn't there anywhere in either of those two games.
Yeah, I agree with that a lot. And my mind goes back to Ray Lewis, who his whole thing as a defensive football player was you might catch the ball, but you're going to pay for it. Like the whole Tom Brady used to explain this guy, which I always thought was funny, is like if I threw it in his section, I knew what I was putting my teammate into. Like my guy was going to get punished for catching that ball. It was just such a great football quote. The Boston Bruins, you're the biggest team in the league. I made a skit joke about this in one of the videos about, dude, you're huge. If you're not winning, make sure no one else does either. I don't mean dirty hits. I don't mean all the dumb shit like the Panthers do. Although the Panthers have the skill to back it up. I just mean make them physically hurt to get inside ice. To win a board battle, make them go through someone. If you're going to take all these minor penalties, make them worth it. Be physical. And it's crazy to watch a team of this size get outplayed and pushed around. Just be pissed off. If you're not going to win, make sure no one else feels like they won either. That's the way I'd rather do it. And so again, I don't want to be like a Neanderthal either, but I mean, you got the size, make people pay for it. And if you're going to be in a 7-game series, hopefully, God willing, you make the playoffs at the end of the year. By game 1, you should be halfway through the first period. And the other team goes, holy shit, how many games do we have to play against these guys? Like, we might win this, but are we going to be able to survive the next round? That's why we built this team this way. Sweeney can say he focused on speed and skating ability all he wants. He focused on size. 215. 215 is the average weight of the Boston Bruins, and we have Matthew Poitras on our team and Brad Marchand. The rest of them are monsters.
Yeah,
I think they've been playing a speed system for a size roster. That's what I think they were trying to shoehorn in the entire month of October.
I think that's a great point. And that's why the Monty conversation is so interesting, because do you blame Monty because he's a bad coach or because he's coaching the wrong team? And obviously we're still happy with keeping Monty around as things start to improve. But I don't think Monty's a bad coach. We might have built a roster that doesn't fit his style, though.
Yeah.
But then again, it's the coach that's always the first scapegoat.
Sweeney has one more coach firing in him, right? Like in his tenure.
Yeah, because he inherited Claude, and then he moved on to Bruce, and Bruce was here for 7 seasons.
Yep.
And then he moved on from Claude or from Butch, and now it's Monty. So yeah, he's got one more, I would think.
And I would say one more at most.
I think it depends, because I do want to go back to that quote that I had heard that Charlie Jacobs straight up said that if they lost that game 7 to Toronto, he had a press conference scheduled. What that necessarily means, I don't know, but I'm going to put my inference hat on and say, if they lost that game 7, that press conference wasn't to fire Monty. That press conference was to fire the entire front office, because that losing to Toronto after having a 3-1 series lead, that would have been inexcusable. Back-to-back 3-1 series lead collapses. There's no way that the Jacobs family would tolerate that, and I have a feeling we would have a different front office today. So whether that's
fan base wouldn't tolerate it, my God.
Yeah. Yep.
Death taxes and beating the Leafs. If you can't have that, then I don't know what you got.
Game 7 overtime. I can't even imagine the views Steve Dangle got.
I feel like half of them came from Boston.
Oh, they must have. I would say the majority at that point.
All the Schadenfreude of just watching their pain again and again and again.
Hey, my most watched video on YouTube is the Panthers loss in Game 7 for the record-breaking year. So people love misery. God, do they love misery.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. All right, let's break down some good stuff. So while we seem like while the Boston Bruins seem like they're at their lowest, they just get their butts kicked by the Philadelphia Flyers. They stand up, ready to lick their wounds and face the Carolina Hurricanes. They get their asses kicked even harder. So what do? Let's do a back-to-back both matinees. Matinees have treated the Boston Bruins so well this year. So everyone is so excited about these games. The Philadelphia Flyers, who just embarrassed you, can't come into town, or the Boston Bruins go and visit Philadelphia. And Swayman's not even going to play. Corpy's going to go in net. So I kind of think that was a good way to just kind of hit the reset button. It would have been easy enough to go back to Swayman and say, okay, here's a lighter matchup. Corpy got the Flyers last time. here's a little gimme, like get back to your game, have a good performance. No, they go back to Corpy and they reward him after a decent, I think he played actually pretty well in relief of Jeremy Swayman in that Carolina game. So Corpy gets a start. And what does he do? He posts a 20 save shutout. God, it's 70 save. That would be hilarious. Whew. 20 save shutout. The Boston Bruins win 3-0. They have a great first period. They outshoot the Philadelphia Flyers 14-5. So I don't know what message was sent in the locker room by Jim Montgomery and the coaching staff, but it seemed like the message was well received. Matty Poitras gets the scoring going with an assist from somebody who really needed a point, and Morgan Geekie really needed to get it going there, Geeks. Friend of the show, don't laugh. Don't laugh.
Look, I like Geekie. He's killing me this year.
Oh, my goodness.
He's killing me.
And Hampus Lindholm gets the primary assist on that game, that goal there. So really good for them to get it going. I would have loved to have a second goal in the first period, but they go to the rim with the lead, which is a nice change of pace. And they keep it going. And they played a really just complete game, I feel like, against the Flyers. At no point were the Flyers really applying any pressure. It seemed like the Bruins were able to control the flow of the game. And they didn't really give, outside of just a few grade A chances against Korpisalo, a lot of opportunities for the Flyers to really build momentum in their home barn. So I really thought that was a well-rounded team victory for the Boston Bruins against the Flyers on Saturday.
It goes back to something I took a friend to the Flyers game at home that we lost. It goes back to something that we were saying almost the entire game. You're not playing a Jake Ottinger or a Connor Hellebuck in this game. On Tuesday, it was Sam Ersson. On Saturday, it was their third string goalie at this point. Volume. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't even matter the quality.
Kolosov.
Volume over quantity. It was Kolosov. Alexei Kolosov was their goalie on Saturday. Volume over quality at this point. Just throw everything you can on net. Something will go in. These guys might be playing in the NHL. Doesn't necessarily mean they're NHL caliber goaltenders. Throw pucks on net, and good things will happen invariably against quality like this. It finally happened. Maybe that's the click that they needed.
I do think that Hampus Lindholm has probably been the best Boston Bruins defenseman this year at just getting shots on goal to create chaos. And I'm like, watch what Hammer's doing, Charlie. Charlie, please, for the love of God, stop trying to feed pasta for the one-timer every time and just throw the puck on goal. You have a great wrister. You can get it through. Utilize your shot. And I have to say, I think that Hampus Lindholm looks like the best defenseman on the Boston Bruins, top to bottom so far this year. And I think that this was a great example of what Jake was just talking about. It was a simple just shot on goal toward the net from the blue line. Hits a body. Geekie gets on the rebound. He tries shooting it. Goalie makes a save. Pops out to Poitras. Poitras buries it.
Yeah.
Pucks and bodies on net, guys. This is stuff I teach my Mites team. Just show some aggression. Go for that rebound. Be hungry. Go to the net. Good things will happen.
Yeah, and if Poitras's jumping in there, no one on this team has an excuse not to. Get in there. Get in the dangerous areas. Take the hits. Poitras loves taking hits. We know that. Dude loves to play head down hockey. We'll see how long he can last doing that. I will say, I think Hampus has been, like you said, the best Bruins defenseman through this early portion of the year. Zadorov, as much as I am critical of him, has been, I think, the second best defender at getting the puck to the net. That dude chucks him and hard at the net all the time. And I love that about him. McAvoy, every time he shoots, how excited do you get? You're thinking it's going top corner every time he shoots. It's just so rare that he actually gets it on net. He had 7 shots, 7 against Seattle, I believe. That's the kind of game you're expecting from him. He doesn't have to shoot 7 times in every game, but yes, get the puck to the net and let guys like Brazeau or Charlie Coyle or just somebody who's big and tough and physical handle the rest of it. Just doesn't have to be that complicated. And I thought the second Flyers game was really good. I didn't think it was a full 60. I think you guys will agree with that. I think there were pockets where you kind of went late in the game where you're like, okay, we don't have a huge lead, But it was the closest thing to a full 60 I'd say we've gotten this season, outside of that Montreal game. But the Montreal game seems like such an outlier at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so good to see, when there was a gaffe, though, Jonas Corposalo come out and really clean it up. And not just like so many people when they traded Linus Ullmark, and I'll raise my hand, I was guilty of it. I did not want Corposalo. No one wanted Jonas
God, no.
Corposalo.
Yeah.
You know,
that was for $3
stay
million.
away.
Fuck off.
Like that was wild to me. But, and we've said this before on the pod too, and I'm not saying that goalie Bob Essenza can fix everybody, but I'm like, this guy, I can fix him. Like he's literally saying that every time the Bruins bring a new goalie into the system. And so far, Korpisalo, man, he just looks super sharp. And seeing him and Swayman after we're going to break down the Seattle game next, but after seeing them both get back-to-back shutouts and in the line, it wasn't a goalie hug, but they were putting their gloves around each other, big shit-eating grins. Swayman's in the locker room afterwards saying, I gotta keep up with Jonas after he gets his shutout. So, that's what's beautiful about a goalie tandem, right? Because they are teammates, yes, but they're also competitors. These guys are fighting for the crease. Having Jonas Korpisalo play like this is an amazing thing for the Boston Bruins, because it's going to make Jeremy Swayman to be like, look at himself right in the mirror and be like, shit, I just signed an $8.25 million deal, and this guy that was a throw-in for my buddy is outplaying me. And he's going to get his shit together real quick. And I think that was a dose of what we saw on Sunday. Shout out to Charlie McAvoy's ass, the Stallion's ass, for making that save to keep up that shutout going for him. But I am just super stoked. I really hope that these two goalies can parlay this new tandem and this competitiveness between each other into something similar to what we've seen for the last 2 years.
Yeah,
I think that's maybe what fuels him.
Sorry,
I think fire fuels Bulldog here. He plays last year out of his mind in a contract year where he's basically been told to prove it. Now he's comfortable. He's got that term on him. It's not necessarily that he's been playing lackadaisical hockey. Yeah, there are some goals that maybe he wants to have back. The team in front of him certainly isn't helping. But now maybe they start to play well. Maybe they'll start to string things together. You see that shutout in front of you the day before, and you go, well, crap. This is a guy nobody really wanted in, and now he's playing better than I am. My turn to nut up or shut up, and so let's shut them all up. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think you guys are so right about that. I think Swayman lives off of competition, and I think I wouldn't say he gets lazy, but I think he gets relaxed when everything's kind of going his way. But I mean, the playoffs, you could see it. He was living and dying by every single puck that came his way. Korpisalo has had 3 quality appearances in a row. I thought him in relief of Swayman was solid. The first Flyers game was very good from Korpisalo, and obviously excellent in the second. So that competition only helps. Only helps. I mean, especially because last year, people like to forget this. Swayman had like a 2.5 month span where he wasn't very good. From like from late January to the end of March, he was not, his numbers weren't great and his analytics weren't very good. And Ullmark was going nuts. And of course, it just swaps right for the playoffs. Doesn't even swap. Ullmark wasn't even bad in the playoffs. He got one chance, and then Swayman was just too good to not play.
Yeah.
Which obviously, I mean, it makes sense why they had to move on from Ullmark, given the circumstances there. But
yeah,
you would have loved to kept them both. You really would have.
Yeah, but having 2 goalies for $8.25 million was not in the cards long term. I mean, it was enough to have 2 goalies signed for, $10 million, although now we still do. But it's
11.
Yeah, I mean, as Swayman said, or as Sweeney said, both guys wanted to play 55 games, and there's only 82 games that you can divvy out. So it was the right choice. I think that the Bruins easily, if Korpisalo continues this pace, the Bruins could even parlay this into a jettisoning of his contract in this offseason and picking up another pick and getting another backup goalie in here. What an awesome reclamation project that would be if they could get a 2nd-round pick for Jonas Korpisalo in the upcoming draft. So
numbers will have to improve because currently they're both sub 900 because of how brutal October was. But I think clearly they're both on the up and up. And I expect Swayman at very least to fly past that shortly. I just can't imagine a goalie of his caliber staying down there.
Yeah. Overall thoughts on the game against Seattle. I'm going to bring up a specific thing to talk about afterwards, but I really thought that this easily could have been like 4-0 at the end of the first period for the Boston Bruins. Shots were 17-1 at one point. I feel like the puck was like bouncing around Decord's goal line like 3 times behind him, and it just didn't seem to go. Had a couple wraparound attempts by like Marchand that didn't work out, but that was an amazing first period for the Boston Bruins. And I have to commend them. A lot of people would be quick to point out, oh, well, Seattle's on the second half of a back-to-back. The Boston Bruins are on the second half of a back-to-back as well. Okay.
Also, we'll take them how they come. Right now, the
At
Boston
this
Bruins
point-
don't give a shit about how they're winning. They just need a couple of
God,
wins.
yes. But it was such a dominant first period for them, and they looked good. They were throwing the body around. They were quick on pucks. They looked fast. They did not look like the heaviest team in the National Hockey League. It just looked like Seattle couldn't get it together, and I was like, man, that is great. Now, can they keep this going? And I think that in the second period, they kind of toned it down a little bit. Seattle kind of got a little bit of the momentum, but they still carried the majority of the play. They played well in the second period, certainly good enough to win. And then I don't know what happened in the third period. Like, thank Christ that Jeremy Swayman was on top of his stuff, because it just seemed like they were content to do Claude Julien style. Let's just try to clog up the neutral zone and just
Turtle.
dump it and turtle. And why haven't we learned our lesson? Why couldn't we do what Carolina did to the Boston Bruins and just continue that pressure? And maybe it was a stamina thing, but like I said, Seattle played the night before too. And I think it probably had something to do with Seattle, looking at themselves in the mirror and being like, are we really going to get dummied around by a team that's 4-6-1 or 5-6-1 at this point? And they kind of had a little bit of a reality check as well. But overall, I thought it was a good win. I would have liked to see more out of them in the third period to not make me sweat so much.
Yeah. I would say my favorite part about that game, shout out to Kick His Ass Seabass, my opponent last week in fantasy hockey. He had Pasta, Marchand, and Zacha. And all 3 of them missed multiple open nets. And I really appreciate that. So thank you for the Boston Bruins, because I won the week by 1 point. 306 to 305. So thanks, boys. Boston Bruins just helping me out. That's what it is. No, that game was infuriating from the standpoint of, how are we not up by 5 goals right now? It's insane how many open nets. I mean, the Decord dive, and Pasta has 80% of the net to shoot at, and he shoots it right into his helmet. Just brutal. The finishing on this team is infuriating, but that's such a negative way to look at it, because that game, especially through the first 30 minutes, the Boston Bruins looked excellent. They could pass. They were finding each other. We finally moved Marchand off the wall on the power play, and it looks way better when he's more of a roamer, gets down by the net, gets to facilitate from there. And it immediately dies when he swaps back and goes up on the wall, and then he gets the puck, and then he just stands there. Whole thing freezes. So I'm really glad they're making adjustments finally. I think that was one of the more infuriating things is, yeah, you'll blend the lines, but you won't make adjustments to the style of what we're doing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of positives, I think, to take from that game. There's some weird stuff too, which I'm guessing is the thing you're going to bring up. But I was pretty satisfied, even including that thing that I'm sure we're going to talk about.
I'm still adamant it should be 3-0. I'm still really
that
ticked.
saved my fantasy week.
I know it saved your fantasy team. I'm still really ticked at that Zacha goal getting taken away. I think that's legal possession. He's got possession on his stick, crossing the blue line. He's making that behind the skates past I think it was Brazo. But
yep,
I think that's a legal entry. He has possession, crossing the line, making that pass. I thought that goal should have stood, and I'm still heated at the refs. I thought, listening to Ace and Judd on Ness, and they were like, yeah, this is a good goal. Like, I see no reason why this guy shouldn't stand. And then they come out like, yeah, he was offside, no goal. We were all so confused, and I'm still rightfully just ticked at that. But
well, even Brick was like, oh, it's because the league said it was because he didn't have it on his. The puck was on his tape.
Yeah, it was.
It was on his tape. It was on his backhand, but it was still on his tape.
You know what I will say though? I did love how even after that, the Bruins didn't crumble. Their game plan didn't change. They went right back into the zone and got to work. Luckily, thanks to the fourth line, because that's what they do. The wheels didn't fall off that game till later. Like Swayman wasn't required till much later.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was glad because I sat there and I think you guys probably had the same thought. That gets waved off, and I kind of went, "Oh, here we go. This has been this season when something doesn't go their way, chippy minor penalties, losing their mind about dumb shit, bad structure in the defensive zone." No, they kept it locked in, which again, I'm taking a lot of positives from that game.
It would have been so easy for them to just let like one bad bounce change the entire outcome of that game. You know, like you mentioned, the bad penalty, you know, Yanni Gord just being able to just drill it into an empty net off of a rebound or something. You know, the Bees were selling out. It kind of reminded me of that first Flyers game, the way that every one of the Flyers were diving in front of their net in order to make blocks. And the Bruins did that. They did what they needed to do to secure the win. So overall, I'm pleased. Something that was a little interesting in this game, though, and I mean, this particular player has been kind of associated with, you know, turnovers at time throughout his tenure, despite being a star. David Pastrnak had a really questionable set of plays on the power play that led to a shorthanded chance against. And luckily, the Kraken were not able to convert, but his misplay late in the second period, resulted in Jim Montgomery making a choice to bench David Pastrnak for the entire third period of the game. And, you know, say what you will about it, I think I kind of like this play by Monty because it's important. He's already gotten called out, and the media was already looking at him for yelling at Marchand. You know, leaders are not immune from expectations, and they need to be held accountable for their on-ice performance. And David Pastrnak was being probably a net negative on the ice until that point. You know, if he's not scoring, David Pastrnak is not a positive contributor on this team. And that message needed to be sent that, you know, if you're Matt Poitras and you make this mistake, you're going to be sitting. But if you're David Pastrnak and you make this mistake, you're going to be sitting as well. No one is immune from consequences. Everyone needs to be accountable. We're all pushing this thing forward together. And I actually really liked Montgomery sitting Pasta down in the third period.
You know, it's
I'm
the
not mad
most
about
you
it.
can do. It's the most you can do when you're Monty, because you're never going to see David Pastrnak healthy scratch. That's not going to happen. You're going to have the fan base clawing down the gates of the Garden and shaking him up, going, "What are you thinking? Put him on the ice." But that's the most you can do, and that should be egregious and a big wake-up call for Pasta, who, you know, while he does have, 6 goals on the season, he's looked like a passenger the whole way through. And I think the beneficiary of being in the right place at the right time, the beneficiary of the loss against Dallas when he scored, the beneficiary of a great play from someone else, Matty Poitras causing that turnover on Matt Dumba. I think he's been in passenger mode most of the season so far. And, you know, sitting him down better be the biggest wake-up call of his life, because that's the most you can do to a star who you're paying that much. It doesn't happen very often, but when that happens, that should click in his head like, "Oh, I'm not in good shape here."
Yeah. David Pastrnak at 5-on-5 has 3 points through 13 games. He has
It's not good enough.
He's not. He has 1 5-on-5 goal. He has 2 secondary assists. As far as primary points, meaning your first assist and your goal, he ranks behind 8 other players on the Boston Bruins. That's nuts. Most of these players have, I mean, he's played 167 minutes at 5-on-5. Cole Koepke, 132, which, I mean, that fourth line is all at the top. Kostelic and Beecher, they're all sub 146 in minutes, and they have 7, 7, and 5 points at 5-on-5, which is just stupid. But Brazeau is outscoring David Pastrnak at 5-on-5. Zadorov has 3 primary assists at 5-on-5. He has more primary points than David Pastrnak has. This is insane.
I love seeing Pastrnak with 6 goals and a -4 plus-minus and 14 penalty minutes. Just even blatantly, it just looks so bad.
Yeah. His shooting percentage at 5-on-5 is 3.03%. That's not going to get it done, is all I'm saying. It's brutal. There's like half the team's at 0%, so I can't even get that mad. But Pastrnak, your job is scoring goals. And he hasn't been good enough, but he's the first one, I think, that will say, I haven't been good enough. I truly believe that. And Monty's had a busy month, man. The yelling at Marchand, the benchings, the scratches, the trying to get the lines right. And again, we just had the whole Monty conversation, but I'm glad it found its way to Pasta. Yeah. Like, just showing, like Ace said, showing the whole team, hey, there's no one who's immune to this shit. You are all in this boat. And you're in this boat with me, and I get to make decisions. It's tough to watch, but I think Pasternak's going to be fine. I think he's way too much talent to. Yeah, he's not a grab the money and run guy. I really hate that whole conversation to be had about McAvoy and Pastrnak. People say it about the high paid players. They got paid, now they suck. I don't think that's accurate. I think McAvoy's had a really rough start to the year. I don't think he sucks. It's tough to watch because you usually have so much faith when Pastrnak has the puck, but right now, what is your expectation when he has the puck at even strength?
Please, somebody get back for the love of God. That's my expectation. When he has the puck.
Because not only is he going to turn it over, he's going to turn it over in a really bad spot.
Yeah. Although I will say, I mean, Loqual already mentioned it. You know, he's not going to. It's not the end of the world for David Pastrnak here. And he already was today at practice. He was saying, hey, you know, I'm accountable. I made a mistake. I'm not dwelling on it. I am moving on till tomorrow. I am ready to do better. And he's got the right attitude. It's the same thing that happened in the playoffs. Montgomery called out Pastrnak. You're not performing enough. We need more from you. You're our big guy. What does he do? He goes out and scores an overtime goal to let the Leafs fall. And guess what, Pasta? Guess who we're facing up first? Right after being called out, we're facing your friends, Willie Nylander and the Leafs. So that's a good segue into what we're going to be breaking down next. A couple other things. Before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to take a quick moment to give a shout out to our sponsors for this season. So we will be right back. This season, the Two Pad Stack podcast is proudly supported by two fantastic local businesses. First, we're going to give a shout out to Earth Eagle Brewings, where great beer meets great company. With locations in both Portsmouth and Somersworth, New Hampshire, Earth Eagle is something for everybody. Whether you're relaxing in their Portsmouth beer garden or enjoying live music and trivia at the Somersworth pub, you'll be in good hands with their craft beers, epic hot dogs, and much more. And don't forget, if you're into brewing your own beer, their homebrew shop has you covered in Somersworth. And when it comes to tattooing, there's no better place than Vital Ink Tattoo in Barrington, New Hampshire. The artists at Vital Ink are all about turning your ideas into tattoos you'll love forever. The team works hard to make sure every visit is comfortable, and their dedication to making your tattoo experience fun and relaxing is unmatched. Whether you're getting your first piece or adding to your collection, Vital Ink is the place to go. Special thanks to both of these sponsors for supporting the Two Pad Stack podcast this season. Be sure to check them out and show them some love. All right. So we're back, and I wanted to just kind of go in and talk a little bit about some news that dropped today. Boston Bruins decided to pull the old Danton Heinen and reward the guy that's been just hanging around. I don't know why this guy just kept showing up at practice, but Tyler Johnson, who's been practicing with the team since training camp, has finally been rewarded with a one-year deal, prorated $775K contract, so league minimum. And he is going to be joining the Boston Bruins on this trip into Toronto. Can I just say, I know that this is not related whatsoever to what we're talking about, but a Great Dane with zoomies is a dangerous thing. And he is sprinting around my recording studio. Anyways, Tyler Johnson is a Boston Bruin finally. I said it from day one since he was hanging out. It just screamed like a Danton Heinen situation. The Boston Bruins needed to open up enough cap space, and the way that they do that is by waiving Tufte and waiting for the prorated amount to get high enough to where they could sign him. So he's finally under contract. Where do you guys think Tyler Johnson slots in? Does he play this game tomorrow in Toronto?
Hold on one second. Can you explain to me this prorated? Because I like the salary cap stuff, but how does that work that now we still have enough to call up a AHL player, right? Because we waited till now to do it?
So my understanding is that we would have to probably waive Jones if we wanted to call up somebody, right? Unless LTIR was in play or injured reserve, so we could put that in that bucket and open up that space. But right now, I do not believe that they have the capacity, salary cap wise, to make a call up.
Okay, because it still lists as having 1.1 million free in cap space even after the signing, but I'm not sure how accurate that is. Which
source are you using?
Puckpedia.
Okay. Yeah. Not a capologist, nor am I a CBA expert, but that was my rudimentary math is what led me to my conclusion.
Oh, cool. Jake, you want to go first?
I think the way to define that, and I'll give it a little credit. You just said Willie Nylander. I think this is a really good way of thinking about it. Who signed his extension on December 1st? It's there are only certain amount of games in a season. There's 82 games in a season. You're already less than 82, so you divide out, what his full season cap hit with the league min of 750. You divide that out on a per game basis. And I guess that number now matches up with what that cap space was going to be that they can fit him in under. So I think that's what the definition of that is for prorating. It's really screwy. But I have an easy answer for where Ty Joe ends up fitting in. I think he's in tomorrow. I think, he's been practicing with the team, so I don't think that there's going to be too much of a skill gap and a conditioning gap. I'm sorry, Ace. Front of the podcast has to be front of the press box here. I think it's Geeky who hits the 13th forward. And it's not even through any credit of, he's been playing so outwardly terribly. I think one of the guys who we've been pushing to be better, and we'll talk about this a little more in Studs and Duds as we go forward, has been playing well enough to keep his spot on the roster. And so I think at the very least for a first game, you see Geeky in the press box, and then you go from there.
So you're saying that you have Tyler Johnson on the third line, right wing or left wing?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Local.
I completely agree. I'm not a big Tyler Johnson guy. I look at what he's done the past couple of years. I think the guy's a 13th forward. That's how I kind of see him. I think he had a 15% shooting percentage last year, was playing on a power play with Connor Bedard. I'm just not I'm not very excited about this signing in general. I also don't think it's a bad signing. It's fine. It's a veteran minimum 13th forward guy. Great. Yeah, Geeky gets knocked out immediately. Because think of the alternative. Is there any other player that you could push out of the lineup right now with the way the weekend went and justify it?
Max Jones?
Max Jones, for sure. But if I don't think he's even in the lineup in my head with this, because it is obviously Zacha, Lindholm, Pasta, Marchand, Coyle. They're all staying. Yep. Rizzo has been, just so productive.
He got the message. Yep.
He's an enigma, man. I don't understand how he's as effective as he is, but what an excellent job he's done on a second line role. Just crazy to me. Trent Frederick is your other argument, who's been severely underperforming.
Yes.
But honestly, the fire he showed at the end of the last game,
Agreed.
Oddly enough, is like, let's just see if he's working his way out of this. If you take Poitras out, I'm going to lose my fucking shit.
No way.
Can I swear? I never asked if I could
Please do.
And then there's Geeky. If you break up the fourth line, the city might burn itself
Yeah,
down.
don't touch that line.
The best part about the Bruins right now is the fourth line. Even on games where they're not that good, which was Seattle, they genuinely weren't that great. But that's fine. You can have an off night when your other 9 forwards are actually doing stuff. I just can't imagine another player being pushed out. But I do think they signed him for a purpose, and I'm going to agree with Jake here. I think it moves Geeky out, and they have high hopes for Geeky. No one on this team has given up on Geeky, but the guy doesn't have it right now.
I think it's important to keep in mind, guys, that Morgan Geeky's also not like a 32-year-old, carpetbagger. He is still a young player. There's a reason why the Kraken selected him in the expansion draft. He still has a bright future, and he was out in the media and he was saying, "Hey guys, I'm reading all the things you guys say about me, and I know that I'm a better player. Please, for the love of God, Geeks, show it, buddy. I believe in you. I saw that hat trick against Vegas last year. I know you got it. I know you got the hands. It just doesn't seem to be coming together this year. Maybe it was all those, Lululemon photo shoots you were doing with your wife, but let's get it going here, bud. I will disagree with you on something though, Loqual, and we'll segue into what you want to do next. But I think that a lot of people, specifically on the Short Shift podcast, Andrew and yourself, everybody has been shitting on Tyler Johnson. And I think that's fair. He didn't post good stats. But what I would counter with is who on that Chicago Blackhawks team for the last 2 years did have really good stats. Because if I'm a back, like I won't say, I don't think he won back to back, but he won 2 cups with the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Mhm.
And how are you rewarded? Oh, we're in a pickle financially. We're going to send you to the worst team in the league. I probably wouldn't want to work my ass off either. I'd be like, well, this fucking sucks. Like, I didn't get to choose this. I'm on a relatively lucrative contract right now, but I want to be playing for a team that has a chance to win a cup. And now I'm in no man's land, and I have to help this fucking kid develop, and I don't get anything out of this. So I probably am not going to post my best stats either. And like I said, and I know you're probably looking it up right now, but who did play well on the Chicago Blackhawks the last 2 seasons? I watched Tyler Johnson this preseason. I'm not saying preseason hockey is the barometer of what is an NHL caliber player and what isn't, but Tyler Johnson looked like a legitimate NHL player. He's got the pedigree of playing in the top 6. He's got the pedigree of playing the bottom 6. Right now, Jim Montgomery needs a player that can be flexible and move up and down the lineup while he's trying to figure out where his combos are. And I think that what he's doing is really going to be a good fit for this team.
It is back-to-back cups, by the way. It was
Yeah.
the 2 Mickey Mousers, the Bubble Cup and
Oh, the
the
asterisk cups.
realigned divisions for COVID Cup. So yeah,
Dude, I have
he
an
is back-to-back.
asterisk on every cup since 2011. So I think that's a great optimistic way to look at it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. No one on that team was good. I I genuinely think he was particularly bad, but there's no reason to doubt the guy until we actually get to see him play. Kostelic looked like dog shit in the preseason. He looked like one of the worst players out there, took awful penalties. We start the season, he's part of the best line of the Boston Bruins, and he's looked awesome. So
One of
like
the best
you
lines
said,
in the NHL, not just the Bruins.
yeah, that's true.
Hilarious, by the way.
So, and like you said, preseason's weird. You don't know what you're getting. He might just be rejuvenated by being on a hockey team with a little bit, like maybe there's something I can do here. He's being brought in at a decent time, like on the upward trajectory, hopefully. So I think it's totally fine to have the optimistic view. I don't have a bunch of faith in him, but I'm going to root for him. He's a Boston Bruin. So, yeah, I think those points are fine. I mean, going into this with an optimistic view is honestly, just more fun.
Bruins fans and optimists doesn't generally go in the same sentence. We're always kind of looking for something to complain about a little bit.
Yeah, even though our team has, I know that like the Bergeron era should have had more cups. We all know that. But that team's been great for a very long time. Like we've been, as far as the last 20 years go, I'm very happy being a Bruins fan. There's a lot of teams that it would really suck to be a fan of.
Yeah, you got to imagine how those fans over in Buffalo are doing right now.
Oh my God. I actually feel bad for them. I have to stop believing in them. I was so I bought into the Sabres hype train this year because I was like, it's a rebound year, 2 years removed from an excellent offensive season. This is exactly what they need. They're gonna absolutely not. They look like shit again.
Poor
Nick and I talked about this on the pod last week that we haven't gone through a full-on rebuild in quite some time. We did the retool on the fly in 15, 16, 16, 17, the Matt Bolesky, rest in peace, Jimmy Hayes, David Backes as a second line right winger seasons. But we haven't gone through a full-on scrap it all, play terribly for a couple of years and rebuild type of years. So
and then fail the
we've been
rebuild and
lucky.
then rebuild again and then fail that rebuild and rebuild again.
That's what people don't get about rebuilds. Is very rarely is it a quick 3 years and then you're back to no, man. Detroit was a playoff team for 25 years straight, and they have been absolute doo-doo for how many years now? 6 years?
Yeah.
We keep thinking the Yzer plan is going to do something, and the Yzer plan keeps Yzer planning all over itself.
Yeah, it's not pleasant.
Keep going. I'm about to Yzer plan. All right. On that note, I think it's time for Studs and Duds. So let's go ahead and jump in here. If you're unfamiliar, this is going to be, I think, our 4th time doing Studs and Duds. It's now going to be a reoccurring segment on the 2-pad stack. So we'll go ahead and start off with mine. Jake, you did give mine last week while I was out, correct?
Yes, it did.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So I'm going to start off with my Studs and Duds. For this week, I am going to give a little pat on the back to the goalies. Jeremy Swayman, Jonas Korpisalo, both of them collecting their first shutouts of the season. So my studs are going to be the Boston Bruins goaltenders.
I think he's cheating. He's grabbing 2 players. That feels like
right.
cheating.
Yeah. It's my podcast. I get to choose. My dud for the week is going to be the Noodle Man, David Pasternak. I know that we can get more out of him. He knows that. And just so happens the coach seems to agree with my dud choice. So no, I'm taking no questions, comments, or concerns. These are my answers. They are going to be undisputed. And I'll hand it over to Jake for Jake's studs and duds.
I like those choices. I think we can actually have a couple of picks from studs now. Finally, now that they've got a couple of games under the belt that they were playing well.
Thank God.
The first 3 episodes of this, it's been like, well, crap, you took the only good stud here. I got to figure something else out. So, the fact we have some choice now is good. But my stud of the week is Justin Brazeau, the Enigma himself. He got the message that he's big, he can shoot. So do both of those things. His goal against Philly, Marshy finds him crashing down to the slot. Just get it on net. Don't grab it and hold and try and play a pretty game. Just take the shot and see what happens. His goal against Seattle, you're big. You can be in those greasy areas. You can fight your way into the middle of the slot. Who's going to move you? So get in that slot, redirect that shot. I think he's starting to get the message that that's how he needs to play. So credit to Brazeau. Maybe he's waking up. That's my stud of the week. My dud is Mason Lohrei. He's healthy scratch these last 2 wins. I love the kid. I know he has so much potential in him. But when you're the healthy scratch and you see your team playing better defensive hockey, which is genuinely your job, you're not a forward, you are a defenseman. Parker Wotherspoon has looked really good on that third line D. That's got to suck for him, but it makes you a dud. It makes you feel like the expendable part of the roster, and hopefully that puts a fire in him, and I can take him out of duds at some point, but right now he's my dud of the week.
Loqual.
So I love the Brazeau answer here. That's not going to be my stud. I'm not going to steal it. But honestly, what you said about him simplifying his game, just getting in front, it actually just made me think of how to fix Geekie. And not in the same way because they're different players, but Brazeau doesn't trust himself with the puck that much. He's like, I got to get in position. I get the puck, I move it, and I go to where I'm needed. Geekie, you're not offensively gifted, but you have the hands. You do have the shot. But you can't be a facilitator. You can't be a guy buzzing all over the offensive zone. I think he just needs to, as soon as he gets it, find someone else to give it to, get yourself in a good position. I think the whole team could probably benefit from that. But I think that was a great point with Brazeau. I'm going to go a little off the page with my stud. I'm going to go with Charlie Coyle. I feel like, and a lot of people I think will disagree with this, especially earlier in the week, but the guy's working his ass off. There's one thing that he has not stopped doing is effort. He's one of the few players that I feel have been giving effort every single game. He gets rewarded for it over the weekend, where he looked really excellent through both games. But I think that guy, talk about simple hockey, just knows his role, protect the puck, get it into a dangerous area, or get it back to the point and just keeps moving. So I'm just glad to see him get a little rewarded with a nice little highlight reel protection of the puck on his knees that led to a goal. I'm going with Charlie Coyle for my stud. Little off the board, but
nearly had a second one that game too. That
Yeah.
shorthanded effort. He had a Kraken draped all over him, and he still got that decent shot on. And
I still think there was a
Decord
penalty on that play. That felt
Probably
like he got
should
his
have been.
arm yanked back, but
Probably should have been.
whatever.
I do think that was probably his best game of the season as well. By the way,
Yeah.
I think he played a monster game that game. So I like that pick.
I
For
may
the
or may not
dud.
have Iser planned all over the place when he scored his power play goal. Those hands, my goodness.
Yes, that was mean. It was
cheeky.
mean, is what it was. This
Yeah.
was school playground rude to the goal. And Decord shuffling out to get at him, and he just goes right around. Just fucking brutal. My dud is Pavel Zacha. Not because he sucks. There is no player on this team who gets more high danger chances just to miss the net. The guy's finishing has been, literally according to JFresh's analytics, he ranks 692nd out of 695 qualifying forwards in goals above expected, meaning he has scored just over 3 goals less than he has been expected to score. As a top 6 guy, you should be in the positive of that. You should be outscoring your expected goals. 692nd. That's through the season. That's not just the 1 week. But I mean, just this last weekend, how many chances did he have from in tight and just either posting out or just missed wide completely? Nobody misses the net like Zacha from the slot.
Unless you're Daniel Paille.
I love that people keep bringing up Paille in this. It's such a fun throwback. Every time I talk about Zacha, someone's like, he reminds me of Paille. Just can't hit the net to save his life.
Well, it's so frustrating though, because you're right. He has all of the skills, and he had that chemistry with David Pastrnak. And I honestly thought, outside of Pasta, for a long time there, he had the best one-timer on the team. The way he was just able to just rip it, and it just seems like accuracy is something that just isn't there for Pavel Zacha. And I really hope that he is able to get there.
I would rather him start shooting for like just low shoulders. Stop trying to go to the utmost accuracy. Just if you hit him in the crest, so be it. Just keep getting them to the point where the goaltender has to do something.
Yep.
Just a
He needs to stay after practice, tie up that goalie buddy to the posts, 25 top shelf, 25 other corner, 25 low post, 25 in the 5-hole before he can get off the ice. He just got to learn to be putting them in those areas.
Zacha, I will stand in that net without pads on. Like right now, with how you're shooting, I'll feel fine. Zero anxiety about it.
You can Mighty Ducks it at this point. Just Goldberg. You can tag yourself to the net, and he's not going to hit you at this point.
I predicted Zacha, and this was one of my hot takes before the season. I thought he was set up for a potential 30-goal season.
I
thought that line was at least going to be better than we had seen previous years, because Elias Lindholm, as much as I wasn't really excited about him being a 1C, it technically should have been an upgrade for the previous season. Zacha just hasn't been able to. He's had the chances, just hasn't been able to finish anything.
I thought that ability to just take that responsibility of like what was required of a top line center from Pavel Zacha and allow him to just leverage his offensive creativity with David Pastrnak would do exactly what you're talking about and allow him to get 30 goals. So let's go ahead and take a glimpse in what's next. We're already at time here for today's episode. So we're going to look at what is going to be the week ahead. And this week is going to have a little Canadian flavor, let's say. So our good friends, the Toronto Maple Leafs, will be facing the Boston Bruins on Tuesday, the day that this episode releases. And then from there, the Bruins will return home for a couple games at TD Garden. The Calgary Flames will be making their first visit their only visit this season to TD Garden, but it'll be their first game against the Bruins this year. So we'll have a little West Coast flair coming in. The Calgary Flames are off to a very Calgary Flame start, which means very average. Calgary has a record of 6-5-1. Their leaders in point. Their leader in points is Kevin Ball on defense with 3, according to NHL.com. If that tells you something, Jonathan Huberdeau, where are you? Like, what are you doing, buddy? Like, you got to wake up.
He started the season so hot too.
Yeah.
Like, I traded him away my first week in fantasy because I was like, I don't actually want to experience this, but I regretted it for about 2 weeks, and now I feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, the leading goal scorer, Blake Coleman. So, old friend Dan Vladar is 3-3-1. He's gotten more starts than what Dustin Wolf has. So maybe trouble in Alberta for the Flames on the heir apparent, taking over the pipe. So it'll be interesting to see how the Boston Bruins do. Are they going to continue? Hopefully some positive momentum. They're able to beat the Leafs, hopefully. And then they have another middling team coming to town, and you can really ride this momentum in the right direction with the Boston Bruins. And then after that, are we going to say a Linus Ullmark, Jeremy Swayman matchup when the Ottawa Senators come to town? How amazing would that be?
I hope they hug at the end of the game.
Can you imagine?
Regardless of circumstances, I hope they skate to the middle of the ice. I hope they feign that they're going to fight, and then they just hug each other.
The theatrics.
And we know they listen to this podcast, so I'm sure that they get the idea now.
Yep. Yeah. Number one fan, Jeremy Swayman of the Two Pad Stack, for sure. Named it after you, buddy. Don't listen to those episodes when you didn't sign yet. But all right.
It's weird talking about the team and loving the team so much, and we have all these criticisms to say, and then like you get in front of one of the players and you're like, I really hope you didn't hear anything I've ever said about you.
I know. Yeah, it's one of those fine lines, right? Because I also have I know some people in the Bruins PR and everything, and It's like, got to be
Mhm.
careful with that stuff. So, but all right, guys, that's going to go ahead and wrap up here, episode 56 of the Two Pad Stack podcast. We appreciate your listenership. Loqual, thanks again for joining us, man. It was so much fun having you here chatting. Make sure, why don't you, if you don't mind, just plug where our listeners can find your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, of course. This was a lot of fun. The Short Shift podcast is on Spotify or wherever you really get your podcasts. That's me, Andrew, and Thomas. We do weekly episodes. It is typically inappropriate and all over the place, but I think that's a
Very
fair
nice.
summation of it. And then on YouTube, Low Quality Bruins fan. We do game reviews for every single game, along with all the Bruins news, and we do some fun skits and jokes and whatnot over there. So come check it out.
Awesome. And you guys know Jake by now, but you can find Jake on Twitter too. Throw your socials there, Jake.
Yeah, at Jake Reiser, Reiser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, wherever. Read me on Stanley Cup of Chowder. I know we're finally kicking things a little in the higher gear as the season gets on there. So at Cup of Chowder on Twitter. Yeah, that's where you can find me.
And then, as always, you know me, I'm Ace. That's Ace in 603. And then make sure you're also following the pod on all socials. That's Two Pad Stack Pod on X or Twitter. We're on TikTok, Two Pad Stack Pod. We're on YouTube. The podcast is now posted in video form on our YouTube channel. So please like and subscribe. We're on Instagram. That's the number 2_PAD_stack_pod. And then obviously we have our website too. So that's www.twopadstackpod.com. But once again, really appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks again, Loqual. Jake, thank you. And I have some good news for you guys. Tune in next week because it sounds like our good friend Burge the goalie might be back with us, which we're super excited to welcome him back in the host chair and to break down some games. So we'll catch you next time. And until then, peace.